Good evening and welcome to this Performance, Governance and Audit Committee meeting on 17th of November 2022. My name is Councillor Jane Fleming and I'm chairing this committee this evening. Members, we are streaming this meeting live as well as recording, and by being present in the meeting, you are giving your consent to being recorded. During each item, please raise your hand to indicate that you wish to speak. I will then invite you at the appropriate time. Please note that the YouTube live stream sound recording is dependent on correct use of the microphones. Therefore, can I ask that when invited to speak, you remember to turn on your microphone and turn it off when finished. Please reference a page or paragraph number when referring to the agenda papers and keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. May I have apologies for absence, please, Berna?
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies for absence from Councillor Stank.
Thank you, Berna. Turning to the minutes, it is recommended that the minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of September 2022, found on pages 5 to 12, are approved as a true and accurate record. I so move. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Thank you. Seconded. If any member wishes to raise any matter of accuracy, they need to indicate that they wish to speak. Anyone? Good. Thank you. Can we agree by assent or take a vote? Sorry, Bernard, Councillor Stilt seconded that. Did you see that?
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, good. Are we all agreed, members? Yes? Okay, great. Good. Declarations of interest. To disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests and non-registrable interess relating to items of business on the agenda, having regard to paragraph 9 and appendix B of the Code of Conduct for members. Members are reminded that they are also required to disclose any such interest as soon as they become aware, should the need arise through the meeting. Members, does anyone have a declaration? Nope. Thank you. Moving on to public participation, I can advise that we have not received any submissions from members of the public. So turning to agenda item 6, the internal audit report, found on pages 13 to 14, together with the associated reports from BDO LLP, the Council's internal auditors, at 6A to 6D on the agenda, pages 15 to 68 in total. Mr. Rubins, welcome. Please present your reports. Thank you.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. So we have 4 reports to present tonight. I'm going to briefly introduce each report and then pause in case members have any questions. So the first one, item A, is our progress report. And you'll see from the papers we have 2 reports we finalised, which I'll present in due course, commercialisation and flood management. We also have 2 out in draft, safeguarding and contract management, so just waiting for final management responses on those 2, and they will be ready for next time. We've also made a slight change to the plan with climate change and sustainability is going to be deferred to next year's plan, because to give time for the strategy to be developed and embedded, and instead we're going to bring forward the audit of cybersecurity, which we had in next year's plan. I think that would be quite useful given the focus on that area at the moment. So that's all I wanted to say on the progress report, item A. Happy to take any questions on that.
Members? Councillor Fluker.
Sorry, I can't actually find Mr. Rubin's report buried in all of this. Where is there a separate report? Sorry, page number or something?
I think Councillor Fluker, Mr. Rubins is referring to 6A at the moment, just the sort of general synopsis before moving on to the other reports. So that's
page 17 of your pack, or I believe.
Summary of work. Members, does anyone have anything to ask Mr Rubins on 6A? Councillor Fluke, are you happy with that?
Well, yeah, only as far as I've found sort of page 17, but I'll go with Mr. Rubins.
Thank you, Mr Rubins.
Okay, so item 6B is our follow-up of previous recommendations, and we've been able to mark 7 recommendations as complete that we followed up. There are 2 overdue. They both relate to the management of property audit that we did. So the reason given is that there's been a delay in implementing and introducing the new property management system, and that's required in order to gather all the data that we were saying is needed. I mean, there clearly is some risk while that is being done. If you remember, the audit report was that the council didn't have a very clear picture on all of its assets and all the repairs and maintenance associated with that. So until that system is introduced, I'm not sure if there's any mitigating controls, but clearly that remains a risk as far as we're concerned.
Thank you. Members, any questions on report 6B? Thank you. Mr Rubins.
Okay, so item 6C is our audit report on commercialisation. That's given, I think it's a positive report. We've given substantial assurance on the design of the controls and moderate assurance on the effectiveness of the controls. The council has a lot of good practice there. It has a very clear commercial strategy. The governance arrangements are generally very good, and good progress reporting and focus around commercial arrangements. The key issue we found was some inconsistency in the way that the project processes were being used. So not in every case we couldn't always find that there was a separate business case or benchmarking being done, for example, to ensure that value for money was being achieved. It should be, you'll note from the officer's responses that we were looking at some older schemes, and there have been some improvements introduced since, which should mean that those areas have been rectified, and we shouldn't find that going forwards. But clearly there were some recommendations resulting which have been accepted and should be implemented in due course.
Thank you, Mr Rubins. Members, any questions on agenda item 6C? Councillor Fluke.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Through you, I just wanted to ask Mr. Rubins a question about risk management and commercialisation. At a recent meeting of this council, I asked a question around specific risk registers, and I was surprised to hear that there wasn't one for the largest project that we're actually undertaking, although, with fairness, although that project's some way forward now, I had been promised that, but I'm surprised that you didn't pick up on that, because risk in commercialisation in any council tends to be very, very high, and I certainly would expect to see a specific risk register for that area of commercialisation.
Thank you, Councillor Fluke. Mr Rubins.
Well, I mean, we do actually comment on that on page 44 when we looked at one project where we said that the specific risks weren't always considered, and there were some weaknesses in the risk management around that particular project that we looked at. So that was one of the areas where we felt there needed to be more focus around making sure that risks are being done. Again, it's part of the action plan. The implementation date is February of next year, so I would hope and expect that to be implemented by then. But I certainly take your point, and as I said, we did find that an issue on one of the projects we looked at.
Chairman, I mean,
yes.
Yeah, okay. I noticed that you sort of identified that, but I would have thought you would have mentioned the correct mitigation, which would have been a specific risk register, and I'm slightly more concerned now because February's 3 months away, and this is quite a big project, and it seems to be gathering speed. But I'm sure that Mr. Butcher will send out the risk register tomorrow morning, and it'll put us all in our comfort zone.
Thank you, Councillor Fluke. Now, I think you raise an important point. Commercialisation, although it's obviously provides opportunities, has risks. We only have to look to other authorities that have got themselves in some difficulty in Essex as a sort of timely reminder that scrutiny of commercialisation is vitally important. If I can just make a comment from the chair, I feel that a wider attendance on the working group would be beneficial. I don't know how many members sit on it at the moment, 6 maybe. I personally think that it should be widened out to ensure that there are more members present. Thank you. Anybody else at this stage? Councillor Fluker?
Well, Chairman, really just to come back on what you said, you know, I'm finding it more and more hard that we have these working groups and they seem to be, you know, the attendance of members at them is quite low, which is, you know, quite unusual to where we've been in. You know, people used to fight to get onto these working groups and now they seem to get on them. And of course that leaves the officers in a very difficult position, because if they're expecting the input from 6 and they only have the input from 2, and then things start to progress, you know, that's not really fair to anybody. So maybe that's something you should take up with your leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fluker. I do think it's a valid point, and I think if you have 6, because we can't sub onto working groups, perhaps we should have, you know, maybe 10 members, and then that would cover, you know, if people can't make it or if they have diary clashes.
I think, Chairman, if you let me come back, I mean,
Yep.
you know, we do tend to have this sort of acceptance that I think, depending on what the working group is, any members can attend. So there is always that sort of safety net, but it's just that, you know, some of these working groups, they are poorly attended.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Channer.
Thank you for letting me speak, Madam Chairman. Actually, the Leader of the Opposition and I did, when we spoke about this, and Councillor Stilts is here, so she might recall, I hope, and in fact Councillor Mrs Thompson is, that was one of the working groups, actually, I believe we did increase the numbers on, because actually we considered the numbers that were running originally weren't sort of perhaps the numbers that, so I think we upped it up by 2. Mm-hmm. And also regarding substitutes, as you'll recall, I hope, a recent conversation we had, where I did perhaps ask that this, with the chairman, I don't know if that conversation has been had yet, about bringing forward that I think there should be substitutions for working groups, but it's not in our constitution. They've run without that, but that would be very, very helpful. And indeed, when we've had aware that someone couldn't attend, we've spoken to the chairman of a working group, corporate projects working group, and in fact another member fell in. I think it was for Councillor Durham who couldn't attend, so Councillor Mrs Thompson fell in. But I'm hoping, or I can do it by motion, whichever might be easier, but I was hoping that conversation might have been had with the chairman of this committee, but I can do that as well. But I did it through you as the vice chairman, perhaps giving you that sort of bit of, how can I put it, approach to, you know, taking it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Channer. I did indeed raise it with Councillor Stamp and Ms Hughes just the other day, so I'm hoping we can get something sorted out on that. Good. Any other members want to comment on agenda item 6C, the report, before we move on? No? Thank you.
So the final report, item 6D, is our report on flood management. This has provided moderate assurance on the design and the effectiveness of the controls. We have seen some improvements since we audited this last, so there has been some effort being put into improving arrangements. Governance, we think, is better. There seems to be more activity from the council and officers around flood management. There's been also the development of a strategic flood protection action plan, which was something we recommended last time, so that was good to see that in place. There are some issues that we've raised in the report. One is around lack of engagement from Anglian Water. Obviously, the council has perhaps limited ability to deal with that, but it is an issue that needs to be looked at. There were 3 recommendations still outstanding from our last audit. Some relate to training, but also the need for a sustainable drainage system strategy, which was a recommendation from last time. So still some work to do, but we are seeing some improvements. And again, happy to take any comments or questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rubins. Members, any comments? Nothing? Anyone? All very quiet this evening? Nope. Thank you, Mr. Rubins. If we can move on to the next report.
I think
That's it. Yeah. Good. Okay. So, if nobody has any questions, I will move on to the recommendations. The recommendations are found on page 13 of the report. I will read them out. That the committee considers, comments and approves the following. Little 1, Internal Audit Progress Report, July 2022 at 6A. 2, Follow-up Recommendations Report, July 2022 6B. Little 3, Commercialisation Report, May 2022 6C. And Little 4, Flood Management Report, 2021/2022 6D. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Stilts is seconding. Okay, can we agree that by assent, members? Yep. Everybody happy? Good. Okay. Any other items of business that the chairman decides are urgent? I do have one from Councillor Stilts. Thank you, Councillor Stilts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is actually a question for Mr. Leslie. Why is there no external auditor's report? And when was the last time they reported? And can Mr. Leslie tell the committee if the last external audit has been signed off? And if not, why? Also, will there be charging more than agreed with the last chair of this committee, and how much more will all this cost the council?
Thank you, Councillor Stilts. Mr. Leslie.
Thank you. I've agreed with the chair that a update report will be going to the next PGA committee around the audit side of it. Like most local authorities, audits have experienced significant delays, and that's been reported on nationally as well around that. And you can see in the statistics that there's a lot fewer councils having audits completed within the time frame, and indeed still currently, and that's largely the case across Essex at the moment. Auditors are working to catch up with a lot of the delays audit. They're putting in additional resources and time frames around that, and we're seeing a lot more progress over the past month, indeed, with our audit, and also with the audits nationally as well around that side of it. So we'll be able to give an update report to the committee at the next meeting on that. In terms of the charges, that side of it won't be agreed until the audit has finished. Fees will be going to the PSAA, the body that determines and agrees the fees independently between the auditors and the councils, so they will have ultimate sign-off around that, and we'll have a much clearer picture within the next sort of couple of months around that as well. So the auditors are finishing the accounts for the 2 years past, and we still will be then picking up the 21-22 set of accounts as well. The council has published its accounts. The council published its accounts on time, so it have done what it can do in terms of meeting its obligations. So the accounts are online and published in their draft versions, and the time frame for the publications have been met.
Thank you, Mr. Leslie. Councillor Stilts, would you like to come back?
No, thank you.
You're done. Good. Councillor Fluker.
So for the period 2021, based on what you know, are there likely to be any material changes? And I mean, I don't quite understand why they're late returning the audit, because the external auditors haven't been under the pressures that local government have been under. Is there any specific reason why they're late, and material changes? Thank you.
Yeah, so in terms of the pressures around the audit market that has been reported on, has been experienced nationally, it's due in part to resourcing issues within that sector. It's also due to a number of changes in the audit regulations and requirements as well. For example, value for money. You'll also be a Redmond review as well, and government reviews do sort of cover the pressures around that, and they are published reports from government out there outlining some of the issues and some of the proposed resolutions around that side as well. So that's added to the national picture around resourcing. In terms of material changes, we give an update to the committee at the next meeting. I think we've already reported on one of the aspects around classification, which required COVID grants to be removed from from the income and expenditure account line and just reclassified within the balance sheet. In terms of the impact on the bottom line, then no, there is no impact. It's mainly a reclassification of where it's shown within the statement of accounts, and currently with the audit nearing completion, we're not expecting any significant impact on the bottom line to a material extent, although there will be some, as I've said, reclassifications within that which do not result in a impact on the bottom line, but that will be coming forward and give an update on that.
Thank you, Mr. Leslie. Councillor Fluke, are you satisfied with that?
No, absolutely. I'm grateful for the update.
Thank you. Okay, members, if that is all, I will... Members and officers, thank you for your contributions this evening. I now draw the meeting to a close at 7:52, I make it. Thank you. Thank you.